Chapter 9. What Boy? "Welcome back," came a soft, lovely voice. Jack opened his eyes. It was Morgan. They hadn't seen Morgan in a long time. "Morgan!" cried Annie. She threw her arms around the enchantress. Jack jumped up and hugged Morgan too. "It's good to see you both," said Morgan. "Arf, arf." "And it's good to see you too," Morgan said, smiling at the little dog. "Look," said Annie. She reached into Jack's pack and pulled out the piece of painted bark. "A gift from a kangaroo." "We have all 4 gifts now," said Jack. "Good work," said Morgan. She picked up their first gift. It was the pocket watch from the Titanic. "Once upon a time, there was a boy who wasted time," Morgan said. "This watch teaches him that time is very precious. It must be used wisely." Morgan picked up their second gift, the eagle's feather from the Lakota Indians. "Sometimes the boy was afraid to stand up for himself," she said. "The eagle's feather teaches him that a small creature can be one of the bravest." Morgan picked up the lotus flower from the forest in India. "Sometimes the boy did not respect nature," she said. "This flower teaches him that nature holds many wonders." Morgan picked up the piece of bark with the painting of the rainbow serpent. "Sometimes the boy didn't want to study other times and places," she said. "This painting teaches him there is mystery, magic, and wisdom in the traditions of ancient peoples." "What boy?" Jack asked. "Who are you talking about?" asked Annie. Morgan didn't answer right away. She placed her hands on Jack's and Annie's shoulders. "Thank you," she said, "for helping this boy learn his lessons. Thank you for breaking the spell." "What boy?" Jack asked again. "Arf, arf, arf." Jack and Annie looked over at Teddy. Then something magical happened. In a flutter of time, in the spin of a whirlwind, Teddy was changed. He was no longer a dog. He was a boy. Chapter 10. Dream Time. The boy was on the ground, on his hands and knees. "Meet my young helper from Camelot," said Morgan. The boy glanced up. He had a friendly freckled face and twinkly dark eyes. His hair was the same color that Teddy's fur had been. He looked a bit older than Jack, about 10 or so. "Am I back?" he asked. "You're back," said Morgan. The boy leaped up and hugged her. "Thank you," he cried. "And I hope next time you'll ask before trying the spells in my spell book," said Morgan. The boy grinned sheepishly. "I promise." Then he looked at Jack and Annie. "I accidentally changed myself into a dog," he said. Annie laughed. "But at least I got to have exciting adventures as a dog," he said. "You are a great dog," said Annie. "We liked you as Teddy. What's your real name?" "If you like, you can keep calling me Teddy," the boy said. "Or how about Ted?" "Okay, Ted," said Annie. Jack just nodded. He was still in shock. "Ted is training to work in my library at Camelot," said Morgan. "He has a rare gift for magic." "Cool," said Annie. You helped us a lot, Ted," said Jack, finally finding his voice. "Oh, no, it was both of you who helped me," said Ted. "You helped break the spell, and I found new stories to take home." "You did?" said Annie. Ted nodded. "The story of the Titanic, the story of White Buffalo Woman, the story of the Wounded Tiger, and the story of the Rainbow Serpent," he said. "I'll write them down as soon as I get home so people can read them in Morgan's library." "And home is where we must go now, I'm afraid," said Morgan. "Oh," said Annie sadly, "that's too bad." "Yeah," said Jack. He was sad too. "I know we will meet again someday," said Ted. "I hope so," said Jack. "Me too," said Annie. Bye. She started down the ladder. Jack pulled on his pack. With a heavy heart, he followed. When they got to the ground, they looked up. Morgan and Ted were at the window. They both seemed to glow in the late afternoon light. "The magic treehouse will return for you soon," said Morgan. "I promise." She waved and they waved back. "Goodbye, Jack and Annie," she said. "Arf," said Ted. In a flutter of time, in the spin of a whirlwind, the magic treehouse was gone. For a long moment, Jack and Annie stared at the empty tree. "Ready for dinner?" Annie asked softly. Jack nodded. He felt dazed as they walked silently through the Frog Creek woods. When they came to their street, the sun was setting. A flock of blackbirds flew through the silvery pink sky. Annie broke their silence as they headed for their house. "We had great adventures with Ted, didn't we?" she said. "Yeah," said Jack. "It was like—" He searched for the right words. Like living in dream time," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. He smiled. That was exactly what it was like.
Magic Treehouse Book 20 Dingoes at Dinner Time Chapter 9 and 10. Chapter 9 What boy? In a long time. They hadn't seen Morgan in a long time. Stand up for oneself. Sometimes the boy was afraid to stand up for himself. Thank you for breaking the spell. In a flutter of time. No longer. He was no longer a dog. Chapter 10 Dreamtime. Or so. He looked a bit older than Jack, about 10 or so. Find one's voice. You helped us a lot, Ted, said Jack, finally finding his voice. With a heavy heart, he followed. He searched for the right words. Practice makes perfect.